Hi, I'm Gary Muse with DATV, and we're delighted to be joined by artist George Middleton, who is featured on our DATV art wall for the next few months. You'll be able to see George's works through early May. And George, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Gary. Delighted to be here.
And George comes to us from the Western Avenue Studios and Lofts in Lowell. And basically, you actually have a loft, correct?
I do.
Yeah.
I have a live-work studio and loft.
Oh, very good. So, George, I understand you've been an artist all your life. How did it all start for you?
Well, really, I grew up in an artistic family. My mother was a watercolor painter, and so I kind of learned directly from her. And then in our family, it was really encouraged. So I just kept going on through high school, and then when I was in my early 20s, I started doing all sorts of different kinds of commercial art, and from sign painting to illustration to murals. I got involved in painting backdrops for commercial advertising photography and scenic murals and decorative finishes for exhibits and sign shops. And so I've done a lot of different types of applied artwork, and then all throughout that, of course, I had my real interest right off the bat was nature and birds, and I grew up in kind of a country environment, so it was a natural thing for me to start painting nature.
Very good. And by the way, I misspoke. Actually, George's works are going to be on with us until in March. So we hope that you can come by and see it, but we'll give you some more information later. So, George, why don't we just show folks what you have here? And again, you work in different mediums, and these are all prints of various paintings of some medium that you've done.
That's correct. These are fine art. They're known as fine art prints, giclée prints. And they represent many of my paintings, whether the original painting was a watercolor, an oil painting, an acrylic painting. These are prints that I've made myself. I've learned how to do that over the last 10 years or so, and I have my own equipment and so forth. And so it's advantageous to be able to capture your work this way and share it with the public in a very affordable fashion, too. And so that's what these prints represent.
Very good. Why don't we actually take a little trip down the wall, and you can talk a little bit about what we're seeing. So we start right with this piece here.
Well, actually, right here on the left, that was originally an oil painting and was done. It was part of a series that was done for an advertising client for bath product packaging. And it was one of probably 35 paintings that I did for this particular customer. And for a number of years, I could go into the store and see my artwork on the packaging of this particular product line.
So it's one of the ways that your artwork kind of sort of lives on.
That's correct.
How about the next one?
Well, the next one is a painting of a hummingbird that I've done. It's called Colibri. It's an acrylic painting. And in addition to the work standing on its own, I use it as my logo, so to speak, or my brand identity. And so it helps for people to know me that way, and they always see the hummingbird and know it's me. So I've made a nice little print of that, and that, of course, has been extremely popular.
Moving on.
Well, here we have one of a number of lake scenes from northern Maine that I've painted. I've spent quite a bit of time up there, and this is called West Grand Lake Sunset, and West Grand Lake is a huge lake up there in northeast Maine, and So the original painting in this particular case was 24 by 36, an acrylic painting.
The next piece, very appropriate for this time of year because we're in mid-January and we just had a little bit of snow recently.
Yes, this next piece is called Carlisle Pines, and it's actually a quick oil sketch, the original that is, that I did in a stand of very tall pine trees that are located in Carlisle, Massachusetts, just a stone's throw from here, really.
And it looks like coming up, Mother Nature is churning things up a bit.
Yes, Mother Nature's churning things up off the coast of Maine, up by Acadia National Park, another location that I've done quite a bit of artwork from. And so that was actually from a camping trip that I spent time up there and did a quick oil painting representing the shoreline where I was located.
Now, when you say a quick oil painting, I can't imagine it's really that quick. What would something like this have taken? How much time?
Well, that was really only the majority of it, a couple of hours. And then I took the painting home and probably tweaked a few details of it.
Massaged it.
Yes, exactly. But it was a nice rapid painting, and I think I captured that sense of that weather occurring there at that time, and so I was very happy with that.
So we go from a little bit of rough weather and storminess to a bit more of a fair weather situation.
Yes, well, this is one of many scenes that I've painted in the southwest of the United States area, general area. This one's known as Navajo Mountain, and it's an area that's sort of located in the intersection of four of the southwestern states. That's a sacred mountain to the Navajo people.
Very nice. Looks like our next one brings back your trademark just a little bit, or unless is that hummingbird or is that something else?
Well, that's actually, it's sort of, this was a fanciful painting, and the story behind that really is, it's called Man of War, and it loosely represents that particular bird species. But in painting it, I wasn't so much concerned with making sure it was you could read it as that exact species. It was more of the tropical environment, which happened to be Jamaica, and I was staying in Jamaica at the time, and I just sort of put this painting together quickly just to try to capture some of the feeling there of the white sand and the beautiful ocean and sort of the view from above that a bird might experience.
And this next one may be more indicative of what we're talking about. Is this sort of the tropical?
Yes, this is definitely a tropical scene. It's called Scotty's Tropical, and the reason for that is because it was commissioned and used on the packaging of Scotty's facial tissue for a period of time. And this is actually a digital illustration where I painted the entire work using Photoshop, the brushes in Photoshop, and I painted the picture entirely using pressure-sensitive tablet and the computer screen. And so it was entirely an advertising piece.
Now, where you have been an artist for so many years, what you bring up is interesting because you started with what traditional art methods you had, and as time went on, you've seen the technology so that you can do something on Photoshop. It's sort of amazing the way things have developed.
It really is, and I was very fortunate because back around the year 2001 or so was when I first started working with the Mac computer and sort of gradually learned how to do graphics of one kind or another on the computer. And I really took to it and became kind of a Mac a bit of a Mac guru with a small g for a while, and as I continued along, my skills, of course, developed in terms of doing graphics on the computer, and then eventually I learned what was involved in making fine art prints. And so in essence, it's really paid off for me in terms of a set of skills that are just so valuable. And of course, that's anything from preparing your artwork for printing or for a customer, to promoting your artwork, knowing how to prepare graphics for your website, that kind of thing. So I'm very happy that I continued learning how to do that.
Let's take it down now. Looks like we're down in the U.S. Midwest. Is this the Grand Canyon area?
Again, yes, it's southwest, the Grand Canyon. And I was really, the focus of this painting became kind of the heat of the place. And so I went a little wild there with the clouds, and it's sort of a realist picture, but at the same time kind of sort of a visionary sort of thing. And that was originally what's called a gouache painting, which is opaque watercolor.
Very nice. And yeah, and you can sort of tell, I mean, even the novice can kind of tell, okay, this was a watercolor, or this may have been oil or whatnot. And I'm going to take a guess that this is a watercolor.
That's exactly right. And that was a very rapid sketch that I did at a lake in southern Oregon. And my wife and I were camping at the time on a cross-country trip, and I painted that very quickly. And it just had a feeling to it, so I decided, okay, I'll make a print of that.
And I think less is more, because this is very simple by your standards, but it's effective in its own way.
Yes. And of course, with watercolor, one of the aspects of it that one can take advantage of is that you might expect out of 5 watercolor paintings, one of them's a keeper. And if you're prepared to paint in a way that, okay, that one was a disaster, and move right on to the next try, you can often get something that really works out well, instead of struggling over one piece.
I suppose as an artist, like a writer, you often go through several drafts.
You do, and that would be a very good corollary to what you just said. And with a watercolor, it could be the same thing. I might put 4 or 5 pieces of paper out in front of me, and maybe one of them is like, oh, that's just right. And of course, with watercolor, fresh and fast is really the way to go.
Very nice. Another coastal scene.
Okay, and this is Lucy Vincent Beach on Martha's Vineyard Island, looking south. And this was a watercolor again. And it's, I have relatives who invite me from time to time to stay there, and very fortunate with that. And it's really one of my favorite places, and it's just endless inspiration, the beach and the shoreline.
Very nice. And this has got a nice sort of feel to it, very peaceful feel coming up.
Yes, well, this is called Northern Nocturne, and it's the original of this was an acrylic painting, I think about 14 by 20 inches. And this was no specific spot, but was sort of a combination of a number of places that we had camped up there. And that's how that one came about.
Very nice. And moving along.
Well, we go to the west again, and this is one of my favorite areas, which is the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming. And This was originally an acrylic painting, a large, I think it was 20 by 30. And I was struck by the weather there and the massive clouds and huge sky. And I was just trying to capture some of that drama of the light in that particular area.
What's the largest size creation you've had?
Well, recently I did a 4-foot by 6-foot acrylic painting for a customer who had commissioned it. But I've worked in the commercial field. I've done some pretty large things. I have done murals that are 14 feet by 60 feet, that kind of thing.
What would you say your sweet spot is? What is your sort of typical?
Well, in terms of easel paintings, in terms of my own artwork, a good size is like 2 by 3 feet or 30 by 40 inches is I think of as large. It gives me enough room to work, but it's not so huge that you couldn't find some place to put it.
Sure. This next piece kind of gives me a similar feel to the one we just left.
And exactly right. This is the Bighorn Mountains again, and that was originally a watercolor painting. And those were actually done, these two were done quite a few years ago originally, but in 2022 I did a residency at an art residency program in Wyoming. And so it was very good to get back there again. I drove cross country for that, and it was just a fabulous trip, and many new inspirations and ideas came out of that.
Very nice. And it looks like these next three are sort of part of a series.
Okay, yes, they are. And this sort of marks a dividing line in the display that we've seen so far. All of the previous works are treated in a fairly conventional realist fashion of landscape painting in that tradition. And from here over, we move into another one of my other mode, which is really sort of a visionary approach to painting nature and painting the figure. And so what we have here are 3 paintings, which are very similar in color, which is why I put them together. And they're also very similar in the idea. And basically, I'm trying to show our very basic human connection with nature from the point of view of the basic energy of things. And then in the center panel, I'm trying to show that feeling through an actual specific real individual person, and trying to show through how they're posed that they are experiencing that connection. So the other thing that's important about these 3 works is that in all 3 there is the ocean. And the ocean represents the basis of our life, and it also represents an ever-changing substance that you can't pin down. And so to paint the ocean demands a way of approaching it that's completely free and allows for something to be created that you may not have any control over.
Gotcha. Very nice. This next piece kind of reminds me of like a paint wheel where the canvas would spin on something and you'd drop drops of color and you'd get kind of wild effects. But what technique is this?
Well, so in this painting, this was originally an acrylic painting. And it was a fairly large painting, 24 by 36, I think is the size of that. And what I was trying to do there was to show the figure from the standpoint of energy and how we direct ourselves, kind of from the middle. And after I painted it, I thought, Wow, that kind of reminds me of, I think, a dream that we all have at one time or another where we're flying, that kind of thing. So that's sort of the origin of that particular idea.
And we move down, and this kind of almost brings us back. It gives me a similar vibe to what we saw with the three earlier.
Yes, it is very similar in the sense of kind of the sense of basic energy. This is called Blue Angel. It was a very quick watercolor. I think it took me 15 minutes to do. And as you can see, there's a tremendous freedom there where the wet paper is taking the paint and moving it the way it wants to be moved. And I wanted to just put a representation of something angelic, let's say. And so that was where that came about. And actually, at the time, I had several friends who were going through breast cancer recovery. And so I sent a print of that to my friend. And so it became representative in a way because there's no hair on the head. And so I felt like it was appropriate in that regard.
Very nice, and a nice connection to somebody that you know as well. Moving on, what is this particular piece?
So that particular piece is called Standing Wave. And again, it's another one of these sort of energy figures that's emerging out of the ocean. People have commented on its sort of likeness as sort of crucifix shape. And I suppose the connection there, I was brought up as an Episcopalian, so I have that kind of religious upbringing, but my dad was more of a, he was attracted to the Eastern religions. So I had this sort of mix as a child growing up. But in any case, to me, that's sort of a strong form and very dynamic shape, the cross. And so that is another in that series of trying to show our basic kind of connection to things.
And then moving down, it looks like we move from water to something that I think of as fire or
Yes.
hot.
Well, this is called Redmond, and that was originally a watercolor, not much bigger than the actual print. And this was just a very rapid, wet into wet kind of painting, letting the wet paper shape the figure in terms of its details. And I was just trying to show a dynamic physical pose. And people have had interesting interpretations of this work. There's been a number of people completely independent of each other saying, oh, that's a guitar player. And then there are others that sort of get the feeling that I think I had partially in mind, which is sort of like the martial arts or kind of yoga kind of pose to it. But again, at its basis, it's kind of like, okay, the energy of our being, rather than the physical features. Rather than specific people, this is everybody.
We then move back to some water.
Yes. So what we have here, this is called Taking Flight, and it's got the figure, kind of a female figure encased in a bubble and on the water. And my approach to this idea was that, in essence, we're separated from our surroundings by a thin, transparent membrane, let's say. And we're working to see clearly through that membrane. And what was so interesting about this was that after, for me anyway, was that after having done it, my daughter sent me pictures that she found on the internet. That apparently there's a recreational toy that you can obtain, which is a giant.
It's like a hamster ball.
Yeah, it's a giant clear bubble that you get in, and you can roll around on the surface of the water. Yeah. So it was. I thought that was just tremendous. That there was a basis in reality, in everyday life that could. Represent as well.
And it looks like we carry that on to the next piece.
Yes, and in this next piece, which is called Triple Play, that was a 3 foot by 3 foot acrylic painting. And in that particular piece, I had that same concept of the figure encased in a bubble, but what I wanted to show was I wanted to paint 3 of those figures, because 3 is kind of a very dynamic, energizing number, let's say. And to me, this was sort of representative of the times we're in now, which very much have to do with collaboration, which we're in a new period of time, and collaboration in all respects is key.
And it brings us to our final print that's up on the wall. And what is this one? What does this mean?
So I ended the line of prints with another from that series of paintings that I did for the bath products. Yep. And so this was White Roses. This was an oil painting, 16 inches square. And I just thought that would be a nice punctuation at the end of the series, sort of coming back to something real, let's say, and but beautiful at the same time.
Very good. Well, George, we want to thank you for being here at DATV. And again, George's display, his gallery, is with us until early to mid-March of 2025. And George, again, comes from the Western Avenue Studios and Lofts in Lowell, which is, if you've never been there, it's a wonderful place. There are floors of artists in so many different mediums. And I know you still have first Saturdays where everybody's studios are open.
That's correct. Every first Saturday of the month, we have our open studios, and it's from noon to 5 p.m. And it's always a very exciting event, and many artists' works are on display, and there's plenty of fun things to do there. There's always a food truck. There's the brewery as well. And we're just the artists of Western Ave are just so fortunate that this has been going on for so long, and it's never ended. And for the last 20 years almost now. So.
Well, George, thanks again. And if you want to check out the gallery, visit us here. We're at Drake and Access Studios, Drake and Access Television Studios at 91 Mill Street, Suite 8 in the Beaverbrook Mill in Drake. And George's information is on the screen, so you could check out George's stuff as well. And thanks so much for joining us, George.
Thank you so much, Gary. Really appreciate you hosting my work here. Thank you.